how can we not ask to what purpose our minds, bodies, and souls will be used?" End quote. The article goes on to say about Turner, Turner entertained at least one comprehensive theory about why the alien abductions took place. At least one group, she suspected, the reptoids, needed to eat our bodies. Rice had provided her with a chilling account, similar to accounts in her book Taken, of an alien abduction during which reptoid aliens actually murdered the psychic. Rice watched this as if disembodied from a distance, then sucked the soul out of his body and into a black box. In a short time, they re-released the soul back into a clone of his body, which they had manufactured, apparently using organic materials reaped from cattle mutilations. Turner believed the reptoids then ate Rice's original body, and in general need to ingest human bodies, because it was saturated with the emotional and/or the soul vibrations of the human. The reptoids did not eat clone bodies, she speculated, because they had not become imbued with soul emotion substance in the course of living. Turner also wondered if the oft-mentioned hybrids might not simply be organic fodder used to manufacture the bodies of the zombie-like, carefully regimented greys. And this is the article still continuing. Until shortly before her death, Turner regularly issued veritable calls of arms from the podiums of UFO conferences across the U.S. and abroad. The aliens, she said time and again, use their powers to control our perceptions and practice disinformation in order to break down our resistance and to deceive us into believing they were interested in our well-being, when they were not. All the evidence, she said, suggested their purposes were totally self-serving and without regard for the needs of Homo sapiens. Now was the time, she insisted, to work at getting back control. Now let's listen again to another quote from Barbara Lamb's Meet the Hybrids. Quote, "Hybrids are here to slowly integrate the higher consciousness energy in order to raise the frequency to help humanity evolve, to become conscious and to remember that we are love. The point of hybrids being here and connecting with humans and having hybrid children is important. We are in relationships with humans, and if we have a child, it's one more hybrid on Earth. A whole new race is being birthed on Earth, the new human. We star beings came here to help create a new race." End quote. So, according to the sayings of the hybrids in Meet the Hybrids, Bud Hopkins and Carla Turner would perhaps be ignorant or close-minded, perhaps negative and untrusting, but in any case, people who will not join the ascension to the higher vibration fifth dimension, but will stay on Earth in the third density for yet another round of soul lessons until the next cosmic cycle. As you will see in the next section covering Dr. David Jacobs' book, The Threat, you will see a more trustworthy approach to the elusive truth of alien abduction, for which there is no doubt whatsoever that a dispassionate, scientific, comparable, and verifiable look at the available information is required. Okay, alien abduction, what is it? Part 2, covering Dr. David Jacobs' book, The Threat. Dr. David Jacobs is a professor of history specializing in 20th century America and began his study of UFOs while completing his doctorates with a thesis on the UFO subject and its impact on sociology. Later, he continued to study the UFO phenomena and became interested in abduction after reading the Bud Hopkins book, Missing Time. David says about UFO researcher Bud Hopkins, quote, "His book, Missing Time, gave UFO researchers the first systematic comparison of abductee experiences and showed that the phenomenon could be studied on a society-wide basis." Dr. David Jacobs goes on to say, quote, "Although I had adopted a stance similar to Hynek's for over 15 years, this time I had to follow the evidence. I had begun to understand that if abductions were actually happening, They could be the key to the UFO mystery because they allowed us to enter inside the UFOs. They gave us knowledge that examining the outside of the objects had never provided. I decided that I would begin to study these cases myself so that I could carefully weigh the evidence. To do this research, I would have to learn hypnosis. By 1992, I had conducted more than 300 hypnotic regressions and had discovered that analyzing abductee accounts was not easy. Asking the right questions and separating reality from fantasy was difficult and even treacherous. False memories and confabulation could lead researchers and abductees into a never-never land of wishful thinking and fantasy. He goes on to say, from my research, I could add to Hopkins' findings on the aliens' reproductive procedures of ova harvesting and fetal extraction. We both found that the aliens required abductees to interact physically with odd-looking babies and toddlers, whom the abductees generally said resembled a combination of human and alien hybrids. By uncovering these elements of the abduction phenomena, Hopkins discovered one of the central aspects of why the beings are here. Having analyzed my own research on the aliens' reproductive procedures, I knew when they were taking eggs or sperm. I could identify when a fetus was extracted or implanted in an abductee. To all appearances, the aliens were engaged in some sort of breeding program. But the ultimate reasons for their physical and reproductive procedures remained a mystery. A national poll by the Roper Organization in 1991 revealed the possibility of an abduction program far more extensive than we had ever imagined. But Hopkins found that aliens were pairing young abductees for long-term relationships. To complicate matters, although the abduction phenomena was traumatic for most abductees, many found spiritual enlightenment and an expansion of their consciousness. Remember that enlightenment from Barbara Lamb's book, Meet the Hybrids? Dr. David Jacobs goes on to say, quote, "What is the purpose of the breeding program? What constitutes alien authority and society? Why are they operating in secrecy? What is the magnitude of the abduction program? What is the purpose of hybridization?" For the first 20 years of my research, I thought that we would never have known the answers to these fundamental questions of alien motivation and intentions. All that has changed now. In these past 10 years, I have gathered information that I feel certain answers these questions satisfactorily. I have put many pieces of the puzzle together. I have focused on the picture, and I do not like what I see. For the first time in over 30 years of researching the UFO phenomena, I am frightened of it. Understanding has not led to a feeling of contribution or accomplishment. Rather, it has led to a profound apprehension for the future. I approach abductees individually in search of some new and perhaps revealing information about the phenomenon, although nearly all contribute confirmatory information. For example, in over 700 abductee investigations I have conducted using hypnosis, I have been told of egg-taking procedures almost 150 times, physical examinations about 400 times, mind scan, which is the staring, procedures about 370 times, and baby and toddler contact 180 times. If I hear anything only once, and I am not yet certain of the thoroughness and veracity of the person who is telling it to me, I withhold a conclusion pending confirmation from other abductees. Notice with Dr. Jacobs an offering of numbers and caution about the information gathered. David says about one abductee he worked with, quote, "As a result of her UFO experiences, Pam had come to believe over the years that she was leading a charmed life with guardian angels helping her overcome life's difficulties. After one particularly vivid abduction experience, she decided that aliens were actually wonderful beings visiting her from the Pleiades constellation. She felt certain that she had been given powers that enabled her to manipulate time and reality to her benefit." Jacobs goes on to say, She was initially disappointed that what she remembered under hypnosis were not the pleasant experiences she had imagined, but she now accepts the reality of what has been happening to her. She realizes that neither guardian angels nor the Pleiades have anything to do with her experiences, and that she cannot manipulate time and reality. Now she wants to be able to confront the beings without fear and force them to answer questions about their activities. Dr. Jacobs goes on to say, as they have recounted their abductions, they have often described neutral or sometimes even enjoyable experiences. But far, however, the most prevalent type is disturbing and traumatic. So that's an important finding that he makes with his rational scientific study. The prevalent type is disturbing and traumatic. David says about abductees who come forward to him or others for regression, quote, as participant observers, they have the most important role of all. They bring researchers like me the pieces of the puzzle so that we can put them together. They are not just victims of abductions, they are also the heroes, without whose accounts we would have no meaningful insight whatsoever into the UFO phenomena. Nearly all abductees recall their experiences with a combination of astonishment, surprise, and familiarity. Dr. Jacobs goes on to say, even with all my warnings and the preliminary discussions before the first session, about 25% stop at this point. Usually, they are too frightened to go on. So, 1 out of 4 people he screens to the point of having their first regression, despite having come that far to find out what is happening to them, stop at that point for the fear that the first session causes. That is significant and says a lot about the true nature of the aliens. Dr. Jacobs goes on to say, quote, for those who continue with me, I conduct as many hypnosis sessions as I can with them. They desperately want to understand what has happened to them and how it has influenced their lives. I have conducted as many as 33 sessions with one individual, although the average for all the 110 abductees with whom I have worked is 6. Hypnosis is easy as long as a person wants to be hypnotized. Anybody can do it. Asking the right questions in the right way at the right time and interpreting the answers is where the trouble comes in. The correct dynamic between hypnosis and abductee depends on the amount of knowledge the hypnotist has acquired about the abduction phenomena and the preconceptions the hypnotist brings to the session. All competent researchers quickly learn that memory is unreliable. It is not unusual for a person to remember details of a normal traumatic event inaccurately. Researchers have shown that they can make people remember something that never happened. A casual but calculated discussion of an event with a person can instill memories in him that have no basis in reality. Through the passage of time, memory also degrades, events blend into one another, and fantasy intrudes upon reality. A second read of Dr. Jacobs' book, The Threat, confirms what I found upon the first read, which is a well-spoken and much appropriate consideration of the layman and skeptic to this topic of alien abduction. Jacobs goes into detail about the problems, mechanics, and solutions in accurate regression information gathering, explaining in a clear way that anyone can understand how and why accurate information can be obtained about alien abduction with regression hypnosis. Here is an interesting example from the book detailing how non-regressed memories of abduction are often congealed into false or non-existent actual details. Quote, another example is that of Janet Morgan, a single mother with 2 children, who consciously remembered a bizarre abduction experience. As she was lying on a table, she saw small beings struggling to bring a live alligator into the room. They put the animal on the floor next to her table, turned the reptile on its back, and then took a knife and slit its underside from top to bottom. The unfortunate alligator groaned and looked at Janet in shock. This traumatic memory threw her into a deep and long-lasting depression. At first, she did not want to recall the event hypnotically because she was afraid it would bring back details that would deepen her depression. After being continually despondent over this incident for almost a year, Janet bravely decided to confront the memory and try to gain emotional control over it. Jacob says, quote, "In hypnosis, Janet's memory turned out to be part of a complex abduction event in which aliens performed many different procedures on her. They conducted an examination, took an egg from her, forced her to immerse herself in a pool of liquid, and conducted a mind scan that elicited profound fear. Then Janet found herself alone in a room, lying on a table, filled with fear and trepidation. The aliens entered from a doorway on Janet's left, pulling the heavy alligator with them, which they placed on the floor next to Janet's table. Staring at it, she began to realize that the animal did not actually look like an alligator. She did not see an alligator's head or legs. In fact, it was a man in a green sleeping bag. When the aliens unzipped the sleeping bag from top to bottom, the man looked up at Janet and groaned. There had been no alligator. The aliens had not slit its belly." Okay, so next we see another problem, which is that the aliens implant false memories or visions into the abductee. Dr. David Jacobs says, "Indeed, the aliens have created, perhaps unwittingly, a unique obstacle to learning the truth about abduction events. It is the problem of instilled memories, images aliens purposely place in the abductee's mind. During visualization procedures, the aliens might show an abductee a multitude of images, atomic explosions, meteorites striking Earth, the world cracking in half, environmental degradation, ecological disaster, dead people bathed in blood strewn about the landscape, and survivors begging the abductee for help. Or the aliens might show abductees images of Jesus, Mary, or other religious figures. These images have the effect of being so vivid that abductees think the events really happened, or they really saw the religious figure. This can be a problem, especially when the investigator is not familiar with visualization procedures and fails to identify instilled memories. Thus, Betty Anderson, in Ray Fowler's pioneering book, The Andressen Affair, relates a situation in which she saw a phoenix-like bird rising from the ashes. It was real to her, and she reported it as an actual occurrence. I have had people remember figures that look like Abraham Lincoln wearing a stovepipe hat, men wearing fedoras, angels, devils, and so forth." End quote. This is an important detail and commonality among abductees. While I do not know if accounts of the hybrids in Barbara Lamb's Meet the Hybrids are true or false, given the clearly documented evidence of alien false memory implantation and the fantastic accounts of hybrids such as off-world experiences being other types of aliens can certainly be questioned as perhaps more elaborate false memory implantation. This could simultaneously be supported by psychics or machines projecting voices and memories from a distance on a continual basis, adding to the assuredness of the hybrid that their understanding is true. Here is yet more error-checking discussion, leading me to trust the evidence Dr. Jacobs uncovers. He says, "And through subtle cues and direct questioning, the hypnotist pressures the subject into remembering an entirely invented abduction account. Leading is a serious problem in abduction research, but not in the way critics intend. When inexperienced or naive hypnotists listen to an abductee's story, they often do not recognize dissociative fantasies, confabulation, and false memories, or alien instilled memories. The result is that the subject leads the naive hypnotist into believing an abduction scenario that did not, in fact, occur." And this is from Chapter 4 of Dr. David Jacobs' book, The Threat. What They Do is what the section is called. He says, quote, "Virtually everything that aliens do is a service to their abduction program. Every seemingly incomprehensible or absurd alien activity has, upon examination, a logical basis. One by one, these actions have begun to lose their mystery and reveal their true purposes. We now know that the abduction phenomena as a whole is not for the purpose of research. The evidence suggests that all the alien procedures serve a reproductive agenda. And at the heart of the reproductive agenda is the breeding program, in which the aliens collect human sperm and eggs, incubate fetuses in human hosts to produce alien-human hybrids, and cause humans to mentally and physically interact with these hybrids for the purposes of their development. The above two quotes, I believe, are accurate and clear and based on comparable testimony evidence. Remember the vastly different character of the abduction and reproductive activities described in Meet the Hybrids, that it was seen by each of the abductees as benevolent. Dr. Jacobs goes on to say, quote, "At the time, abduction researchers knew that aliens take human eggs and human sperm, fertilize them in vitro, add alien genetic material, and then replace the altered hybrid embryo in utero. Presumably, the subject had to have a uterus in which to implant the embryo. But I had regressed many women who were abducted when they were postmenopausal or had undergone tubal ligations or had their uteri and ovaries removed. I had always assumed that the aliens administered different reproductive procedures to them than to women who were still fertile." Okay, next, here is an account of one of the abductees. She says, quote, "They're holding something like you would hold a baby with two hands, but it's not a baby. It's like I don't know, I can't even imagine." Dr. David Jacobs says, "Does it look like a baby or not?" "It looks like a lobster. I can't even imagine. My legs are up and they are in this position in front of me, you know, almost as though they were inserting a sack." End quote. This is just the beginning of the shocking testimony, mostly from women, about impregnation with alien fetuses. As noticed in Meet the Hybrids, the vast majority of abductions and recovered information is from women and includes underage girls to senior citizens. The abductee goes on to say, "It's not that I was saying no. I wouldn't say no. I won't say no to them. I have a feeling that I'm here to serve. I have that feeling, though. I have a commitment to serve, but I don't like it. I'm kind of telling them I find this very repulsive. This is not what I want to do. But they didn't ask me if I want to do this. I don't like this at all, and I'm very upset." End quote. Notice that, while she is repulsed by what is being done to her, she would never say no to the aliens, and that she is there to serve. At the same time, she does not like what they are doing. Could it be that, as the people in Meet the Hybrids say, she is a starseed who chose to incarnate here? Or is that, since she is there to serve, implanted programming? Jacobs responds, quote, "I hope that you told them. They don't have the right to do this. Lydia, this is something that's not their right, so it's perfectly okay for you to be upset." Abductee responds, crying, quote, "I think this is about the worst thing that's ever happened to me. You know what this is making me do? I have to change to conform to this. The way my body operates is being disturbed now, and I have to conform to be compatible, to create an atmosphere conducive for this thing. It's throwing my body all off." Jacob says, quote, "They don't have the right to do this," end quote. But is that really true? Notice the wording of the abductee, quote, "I'm here to serve. I have that feeling, though. I have a commitment to serve," end quote. A particular note is the word commitment. Why would she say that unless either in fact she has, as described in Meet the Hybrids, made a soul agreement? And what are the real implications of this? If it is true that many, most, or even all abductees have in fact made an agreement, which they often do not remember consciously, it may be, quote, legal in a sense for the aliens to be doing what they are doing to them. In a show I saw about abduction, I I remember distinctly a man who was an abductee saying that in a terrified, out-of-control abduction situation, he screamed at his captors, "You don't have the right!" To which came a clear response, "We do have the right," from the aliens. Could it be, in fact, they do have the right because the person is a starseed, or perhaps a person who has, in some mysterious way, made a commitment to serve? Dr. David Jacobs continues, "At the time, I did not know how to interpret the report. Now I knew. I realized that it was possible the aliens are making women carry babies even if the woman does not have a uterus. Instead of implanting the embryo in a uterus, the aliens could be inserting an extrauterine gestational unit, a sac capable of incubating a fetus without having to be attached to the uterine lining. The aliens place the unit in an area near the uterus, or perhaps even in the space that the womb originally occupied, or behind the bladder, or near the ovary." And I say about that, one has to ask, even if the person has made some kind of agreement and chose also to forget they had, is this something good that we should be allowing? We have women, uterus or not, being used as living incubators for alien fetuses. Isn't that kind of like the predator bird that puts its own egg into another type of bird's nests, and then when the mother hatches the eggs and the chicks of the alien bird pushes out the real child of the parent? Can we possibly see this as raising the frequency of the planet and helping humanity and the Earth? Jacobs goes on to say, "Now other puzzling cases also began to make sense. The introduction of air, accompanied by a bloated feeling and the sense that organs were being moved around, was most likely a preparation of space into which the aliens place the extrauterine gestational unit. They literally hollowed out an area for its placement. The implications of these cases were unsettling." He goes on, "Whatever the reproductive stage or abilities of female abductees, they can help produce babies. They can house the standard uterine fetal implants as well as extrauterine gestational units. In addition, these gestational units might help to camouflage the phenomenon. They do not trigger the human gonadotrophin hormone reaction normally registered on a pregnancy test. The extensive use of women as hosts for hybrid babies brings into sharp relief the importance of the breeding program. Its scope is enormous. In theory, the aliens have produced hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of offspring." End quote. And notice that the threat was published in June of 2008, 8 years ago from now, 2016, and given other numbers combined with the exponential expansion of the Mantis alien hybrid program by the children of abductees becoming abductees themselves, I think it's safe to say there are millions of them by now. How many are there out in space or in underground bases? How many are walking among us and no way to tell them apart or what their motives are? Jacob says, "It has become clear during these years of my research that the aliens prevent these actions by removing the critical evidence before the abductee can act. On many occasions, abductees have reported scheduling an abortion only to find an empty uterus during the actual procedure. By the time the abductee undergoes the procedure, the aliens have already removed the fetus. Therefore, the aliens must monitor selectively, and they probably target thoughts related to specific subjects. If an abductee thinks about pancakes or shopping, it does not trigger a reaction. But if an abductee thinks about abortion, pregnancy, babies, and implants, these thoughts result in action if there is adequate time." So Dr. David Jacobs confirms what I myself have experienced with the targeted individual gang stalking I got for uploading reptilian shapeshifter movies to YouTube. Here he is describing that the aliens actually monitor the thoughts of their abductees, where he notices that certain thoughts act as triggers, exactly what I experience. Just a note, I saw a video interview with Dr. David Jacobs, and he said that in his experience, there is no out-of-body experiences where abductees go to other planets and such and interact with beings in the spirit realm or whatever. But he says it is a physical phenomena because of proof they are missing from their environment. It may be that the types of people who went to him for help are not the type who have astral projection capabilities, but still we do not know the nature of what they really are experiencing. For instance, it is well known that remote viewers have a hit or miss ratio of accurate information, so who knows what can be manipulated in these experiences. Jacobs goes on to say, the alien's ability to stare into abductees' eyes and affect a wide variety of changes in brain function is extraordinary. At first it seems almost supernatural or mystical, as if Svengali were peering into Tribili's eyes, mesmerizing her to do anything he wanted. But the mystical and supernatural are not part of the abduction phenomenon. The aliens use their advanced knowledge of human physiology to control humans and, ultimately, to make sure that humans comply with the breeding program and all other parts of the alien agenda. Notice Jacobs uses common sense about what probably even many of the hybrids believe to be magic or mystical, and spells out that it is advanced knowledge of human physiology combined with mental abilities to project thoughts and feelings into a person to make them feel, do, or think anything. As a conclusion, you will notice from watching interviews with Dr. Jacobs, he says that the hybrids, the hybrids that look exactly like us, have the same ability of psychic control over humans, and this power makes them first-class citizens and us second-class citizens, which he says does not bode well for the future. A particular note is how the aliens read the mind of the person and are then equipped to elicit a sexual response that will be successful for what they want. And it is clear they are successful. In my estimation, these beings are so advanced technologically and biologically that Earth humans really do not stand a chance against them in the ordinary sense, even if we were to make a sudden 1,000-year jump in knowledge and power. Dr. David Jacobs says, quote, the mental procedures must be viewed in relation to the aliens' reproductive agenda. Without the ability to manipulate the human brain, the aliens would be unable to control the abductees physically or mentally, and the breeding program would not be feasible in its present form. Abductees often feel even more violated by the mental procedures than the reproductive ones. They know that their private thoughts are not their own and that they can be tapped into and manipulated. Because most aliens are small and gray, for years I thought the Nordics were examples of confabulation and wishful thinking, which transformed the ugly aliens into handsome, blonde, blue-eyed humans. After listening to many accounts of these more human-looking aliens, I concluded that the evidence clearly suggests that the Nordics are most probably adult hybrids, the products of human-alien mating. So the Nordics may in fact only be hybrids, which makes sense from the standpoint of why would they be working with the insectoid-led breeding program, but if they are a separate race, they could be cooperating with the insectoids as apparently the reptilians are. Jacobs goes on to say, although we have not yet delineated the reptilian being's role, the insectoid beings are coming into sharper relief. Abductees have reported an alien who seems to have a higher rank and supervisory status than even the taller beings. He is very tall and is usually wearing a cape or long robe with a high collar. He often is described as an insect-like being who looks somewhat like a praying mantis or a giant ant. He examines abductees only infrequently and most often engages in staring procedures. When he communicates telepathically with humans, his talk is often more substantive, and he is sometimes more forthcoming in the information he imparts. But generally he stands back, observes the abduction proceedings, and may issue directions to the taller beings. Here we see how it appears that the insectoids are the main ones running the abduction breeding program. This makes sense according to what Simon Parkes said, which is that the mantis aliens are the master geneticists, whereas the reptilians do not have this technology as much, though they are working on it. Jacob says, although the aliens might have disagreements among themselves, they generally present a united and positive front to the abductees. They constantly tell the abductees how important the program is and how thankful they are for the abductees' help. I hate to seem old-fashioned, but doesn't help require consent? So next here we have an abductee describing her situation. Quote, "She's going to show me how. She's picking up the baby. She's trying to put it against her, but it's like she doesn't know how. Now she's asking me to do it, and I said no. She puts it down again, and I'm asking what they do with these babies. Where do they come from? She's telling me I don't need to worry about that the babies need to be held, otherwise they can't grow right," whatever that means. I'm telling her that she doesn't have to worry about them growing right, because they are already not right. She doesn't seem to like the way I feel. She's explaining something to me." End quote. It is clear the aliens do not seem to think that there is anything wrong with what they are doing. That is part of the mystery of them. They do not feel the need to tell anyone, even mothers that carry their babies, what they are doing and why. The alien in this case cannot seem to realize why the woman would find something wrong with holding an alien-human hybrid baby. I think this is part of the scary thing about them. They are high-tech wielding, so advanced from us we really cannot stand a chance against them in a military sense, yet they do not understand something as simple as right and wrong in dealing with people. One thing I would say about this, I find it unlikely they realize humans are the people of God, whom He will dwell among. Or perhaps they do know it, and this is a deliberate rebellion. Dr. Jacobs says, "Trying to make Reshma cooperate, the female alien took her to an incubatorium, a room that contained hundreds of containers of fetuses." And here's the abductee again saying, "She's waiting to see my reaction. I'm asking her why they are doing this, and how do the babies survive like that, and how I wish we had something like that so I didn't have to go through the birth pain. She's saying to me that if we did that, these babies would have no emotions, just like their babies, and that's why they need our help. These babies can grow physically, but emotionally they're dead. They need us to do that, nurture the babies, and I'm asking her, why do they have to do all this?" End quote. Jacob says, "Good question. What is her answer then?" The abductee replies, "She's not saying anything. It's like she can't believe I still want to know more. She's saying that these babies cannot function exactly like they do in their society. Neither can they function if they were in our society exactly like us. So she's saying that we have to work together so these babies are not wasted. They cannot work on the babies alone because of the way they function. The baby cannot function like that. And they cannot let us have them because they're not like us. But they need something from them and from us. She seems real frustrated with me." End quote. The abductee goes on to say, "She's not saying anything. She's just saying we need to do that. She says in time I will know. I'm suspicious of her, so I ask her, do you want my kids? And she says, not the way I think, to adopt them or something. There's no use for them here. That's all she says. I'm angry, and I'm saying to her that if they keep those babies in the wall like that, of course they're not going to have any emotions. She's saying to me if they kept these babies in our stomachs for 9 months, that there would be too much confusion. So it's better to take these babies out when they're very small, so we don't know, and they keep bringing us back to help them out. They have to take them out so we don't know what they're doing. I'm looking at all the boxes in the wall. She's asking if I'll help them. I said no." And continuing in the book here, Jacob says, eventually, although Reshma did not want to, she relented and held a baby. It is rare that an abductee can resist what is being requested of her. So we see here this amazing description of what is going on aboard these ships. The hybrid babies need to be held by a human, or they will not develop emotionally. The alien tells the woman that we have to work together so these babies are not wasted. Notice the alien's lack of realization why the woman would want to know the reason they are doing all this. And repeating that quote from the abductee, quote, I'm asking her why they have to do all this. She's not saying anything. It's like she can't believe I still want to know more, end quote. Why would there be wonderment of this huge question anyone would have? Yet the alien seems to be genuinely perplexed. Notice also what seems to be a smooth-over for concealment, because the alien says that if they let human women gestate the baby to maturity and give birth to it, this would cause too much confusion. Well, that, and there would be proof of what is going on right there with the alien hybrid baby. Confusion seems like a side element compared to the clearly massive effort to keep even the existence of aliens out of human knowledge. Reshma was very resistant to help the female alien, even saying it did not matter if the babies did not grow up right because they already were not right, and refusing to hold a baby as requested. Jacobs then comments that she ends up holding the baby and that abductees can rarely resist what they are asked to do. It is clear from this exchange that Reshma was conscious enough to realize the situation and object, saying this whole situation was not right, and even refusing what the aliens requested. The fact she then capitulates and holds the baby speaks again to the kind of control the aliens have over humans, and why in fact Dr. Jacobs laments his finding that humans will shortly be second-class citizens. If they look everything like us, but can control us, what we think, what we see, what we do, we are at a complete disadvantage. History tells us that racial advantage is never wasted. Jacob says, they have implemented a policy of secrecy that has effectively prevented us from understanding them or their intentions. Secrecy is the cornerstone upon which the abduction phenomenon rests. The success of the alien agenda depends on it. The evidence surrounding the UFO and abduction phenomena strongly points not to revelation, but to concealment as the goal. Only one thing is certain. Whatever the reason for it, the alien secrecy strategy has been enormously successful. Most people who have had a lifetime of abduction experiences remain unaware of what has happened to them. Not being taped on video equipment or photographed is essential to maintain the alien secrecy. It's a key point, the importance of video. They are extremely careful to make sure that the abductee turns off photographic detection equipment before an abduction. If necessary, they can cause a power failure in the house or neighborhood to prevent the detection equipment from working. They do not want to be seen. So this matches my own experience with the reptilian shapeshifter uploads and gang stalking, although this is the grays and insectoids. Jacob says, because producing offspring is a primary goal of abductions, successful fetal implantation and extraction are critical. Virtually all female abductees have had embryos implanted, and after a period of weeks or months, the fetus has been removed. Once a woman has been impregnated, she continues with her normal life, but she is carrying the alien fetus. Although few female abductees are aware of the fetus, they, and not the aliens, are in control of it and the pregnancy. For the aliens, this crucial shift in control comes at a perilous time. If the woman realizes she is carrying a fetus inserted into her by the aliens, she can elect to terminate the pregnancy. Indeed, many female abductees have sought abortions. Jacob says, Because the fetus must be protected, the most effective method to prevent the abductee from knowing about the pregnancy is to keep it a secret from her. In response to Lucy Sanders' question, one alien was uncharacteristically forthcoming. He told her, "We have our own interest because we are removing your ova and using it for our own genetic purposes. We know this will be very disturbing to the human female because she is a reproductive organ between the two of the species. She is the host for reproduction, and we only remove those that we need." The alien goes on to say, "We sometimes use the female human as a host for genetic reproductive purposes. We feel that if the female of the species knows that her body is being used as a host, she may wish to remove what she feels isn't hers. So we put a very strong block on her memory process so that she has no idea that the implant has been put there. We will do the same for you when we, as we have in the past, implant you. We feel that it is better for the female if we do not leave the implant in. We are able to bring the fetus to term using our own females, but within the first trimester it must be removed so that the female human does not realize she is a host to an implant. We find, physiologically, within the first trimester, if the female host is unaware of the implant, she goes about her normal routine and it does not have a debilitating effect on the fetus. Upon removal, we put another blank on the female human host so that in the future we can do this same procedure and she will be accustomed to it." End quote. Jacob says, "Are all children of abductees incorporated into the phenomenon?" The evidence suggests that the answer is yes. If an abductee has children with a non-abductee, the chances are that all their descendants will be abductees. This means that through normal population increase, divorce, remarriage, and so on, the abductee population will increase quickly throughout the generations. When those children grow and marry and have children of their own, all of their children, whether they marry an abductee or non-abductee, will be abductees. Again, this might be why the scripture says, Genesis 6:9, "These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God." Perhaps the corruption of man, which required a flood, came from something similar, some kind of genetic corruption. That's why Jesus says, as in the time of the flood of Noah, so will it be in the end-time judgment. Matthew 24:37. "But as the days of Noah were," Noah meaning Noah, "so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." Why say Noah was perfect in his generations, unless almost everyone else had been corrupted by that which happens in generations, that is, breeding? Jacob says, "Secrecy is not necessary to protect society from the shock of revelation of contact, nor is it necessary to protect the individual's life from disruption. Secrecy is necessary to protect the alien breeding program. It is a defensive measure, not against the hostility of violent and frightened humans, but against the hostility of a host population who would object to being the victims of a widespread program of physiological exploitation." End quote. And he goes on to say, "Now we can understand why the aliens will not land on the White House lawn. If they were to do so, the reason they have come to Earth might be discovered, and they might not be able to continue with their breeding program. Most of the past secrecy theories have assumed the aliens concealed themselves to hide their existence. It is now clear that the primary reason for secrecy is to keep their activities hidden, and therefore they must keep their existence a secret." End quote. While on that question of secrecy, there has been a rumor in the UFO circles that the Earth is enveloped in a shield of some kind which the aliens have put over the planet, and in addition, they attack any outside alien craft, which I saw an orbital video actually showing an incoming ship of some kind and another ship firing at it, and the incoming ship turning away from the Earth.